last week, last was the schedule release, and we now know who, where, and when the Eagles will be playing. Any disrespect shown to the Eagles by the NFL in putting together their schedule in your estimation?
I don't really see that, Jody. I don't really. I'm not a guy who really pores over the schedule that assiduously. I wrote something last week on Facebook. I think you read it. The schedule is the schedule. I mean, you're a good team. You probably had the most talented roster in the league last year. You probably should have won the Super Bowl. Of course, you're going to play good teams. That's kind of how it works. I've never, in all the years I covered the Eagles, I never sat down at the end of the year and thought, the schedule that was really the reason things didn't go well this year. And my other point is, people talk about strength of schedule and how the strength of schedule is so daunting. Well, the way they figure out strength of schedule, it's real scientific. They look at what teams did last year and they say, okay, so this is the strength of schedule for this year. That's like me saying, tomorrow's Tuesday, the whatever it is, 16th or whatever, 17th. Last year on that date, it rained. So therefore, I'm going to expect rain tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. The strength of schedule will be very different in November and December than it is right now. We just don't know what's going to be different, but it always is. Things never happen the way they happened the year before. I just don't. The NFL has done a genius job of taking all these things in the offseason that 30 years ago used to be like, oh, well, and making everything into, now there's all these, the team.
Well, we frozen less. Is he frozen for you, Jody? Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, I agree with Les. I always go back to Peyton Manning because I always say, to me, he was the most consistent regular season quarterback of all time.
Yep.
And, when he took off, it was kind of year 2, and we'll try to get Les back up here. Les, I was talking about the schedule, and I agree with you with that good team aspect. I always go back to Peyton Manning. I was telling Jody, I think, he kind of took off in year 2 in Indianapolis, and I think it was like 12 consecutive years. They won 10 games, and like 10 or 11 of them, they won 12 games. They're always playing a first place schedule. They always won 12, 13, 14 games because they were a good team. And it kind of takes care of yourself if you're a good team. However, while I do say that, look, the Eagles don't have that consistency. They were tremendous last season. Now we get to see if they can develop that consistency of being a good team year in and year after year. But if you are a good team, the schedule, nobody's going to even, it's going to be a blip. You're going to win 12, 13 games.
Well, I also think that maybe the schedule did them a disservice last year in that we all talked about Jonathan Gannon and the defense all season long, and people were dissatisfied, but there were these statistics. They were first in this, they were first in that. They had 70 sacks. Oh, my goodness, And there was this undercurrent of the few times that they played really good quarterbacks with lines that could protect, they really didn't.
We got less issues again. It's that Haddonfield Wi-Fi that we're having problems with.
Haddon Township for last. Nick Sirianni, that's the really well-heeled people in Haddonfield.
Did you pay your cable bill this month, Mr. Bowen? Are they trying to tell you something by freezing up your video on us? Yeah, he's not hearing us. So we got connection issues with Les. But you were saying about Peyton Manning and how the schedule affected him. We don't know if he should.
It didn't. Well, my point is, it didn't affect him that much. They were so consistent. I always joke that with those Peyton Colts teams, and really when he went to Denver, you'd start at 10 wins. That was sort of like the default. That was a bad season, and then they would go win 12. That was an average season. And if they got above 12, 13, or 14, that was a good season. And the consistency, and by the way, it's less and less is back. They had a first place schedule that whole time because they were winning division after division after division. If you're a good team, it takes care of itself. But Les was talking about the disservice of the schedule. They didn't beat anybody. How many times we hear that?
Yeah.
You just beat who's in front of you.
Right.
Good teams tend to do that.
I do think last year, if they'd have had some games that would have showed them the deficiencies that erupted in the Super Bowl a little more plainly, maybe they would have done something planning wise. Maybe they could have done something at the trade deadline if they needed to. I think even if you'd win 11 games this year instead of 13 or 14, maybe you'll find out more about yourself, if that makes any sense, playing better teams, and have a better sense of what you need to do in the playoffs. They kind of romped through they did romp through the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl. And, I just think, it's not a huge point, but I just don't think it's a bad thing to play good teams. If you hit a streak of good teams at a point where you have key injuries, sure, that can torpedo your season. That can take you out of contention for the first round bye and all that stuff. But, until you get there, there's no sense in really worrying about that. And
you can't legislate injuries. I'm with you there.
Right.
I mean, yeah. Tell me who's healthy in week 13. I'll tell you who's going to win, basically.
Right. But if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you can't use injuries and bad luck as an explanation because the Eagles don't ever cop to luck. When we give them credit for keeping their players healthy and having less injuries than everybody else, people say, well, you got a little lucky there. Well, there's no such thing as luck. So when you have a crop of injuries, you can't go, oh, we got bad luck. We just got killed by the injury bug. No. Either there's luck involved or there's not luck involved, one or the other. And the Eagles don't like to consider it lucky when they don't have injuries, so they can't lean on it if they do have injuries.
To be fair, and I'll throw this at Les, I don't think they like that word. But Howie's acknowledged a couple of times, Les, that he knows there's probably going to be a regression to the mean when it comes to injuries. They were really healthy last year, and that's probably not going to happen again. But, yeah, they don't like that word, especially when you bring it up to the coaches. It's not luck.
What word would they use, do you believe, John, if they had a group of injuries, spate of injuries, as Les just described, at a key juncture of the season?
Regression to the mean.
Okay. Yeah.